Welcome to this philosophical debate. Today we bring together two great thinkers to face one of the deepest questions of human life. The question is this: is life suffering that must be escaped, or is it an absurdity that must be embraced? Schopenhauer, the German philosopher of the 19th century, argued that life is filled with endless suffering. He believed that behind everything we see and experience, there is a blind and restless force he called the will. This will pushes us to keep desiring, to keep striving, never allowing us lasting peace. For Schopenhauer, existence itself is a burden, and the highest wisdom is to quiet the will and escape from the cycle of pain and desire. Albert Camus, the French thinker and writer of the 20th century, saw the world differently. He believed life has no inherent meaning, that the universe is silent in the face of our longing for purpose. This is what he called the absurd. But unlike Schopenhauer, Camus did not see this as a reason to withdraw. He argued that we should face the absurd directly, without illusion, and embrace life as it is. For Camus, even in a world without higher meaning, we can live fully, create love, and find joy in our revolt against the silence. This debate will unfold in 4 acts. Each act will explore a different side of the question: the nature of existence, the role of suffering, the problem of meaning, and the human response. You will hear Schopenhauer and Camus respond to one another, each speaking from his own philosophy, each challenging the other. Let us begin.
When I look at the world, I see not a harmony or a gift, but a restless and ceaseless striving. Everything in nature, from the smallest insect to the greatest human ambition, is driven by a blind force I have named the will. This will is not rational. It has no higher purpose. It simply urges life forward in endless desire. You feel hunger, you satisfy it, but hunger soon returns. You fall in love, you win affection, but soon the longing for more arises. Every attainment is fleeting. Every satisfaction is temporary. And what lies beneath is always the same force that will not let us rest. Life, therefore, is not a blessing but a burden. It is a task forced upon us without our consent, and every moment of joy is nothing but the brief release from an ever-present pain. This is the true nature of existence. To live is to be enslaved by desire, and to be enslaved by desire is to suffer.
I hear in your words the heaviness of despair, but I see life differently. Yes, I too recognize that there is no lasting satisfaction, no eternal purpose that quiets our longing. But to me, this is not suffering alone, it is also the truth of our condition. You call it will, I call it the absurd, the meeting of our human hunger for meaning with the silence of the universe. We ask, why are we here? The world does not answer. Yet this silence does not crush me, it awakens me. For in the recognition that life has no fixed meaning, we also recognize our freedom. If life is not given a meaning from above, then it is open for us to live, to create, to experience without illusion. I do not wish to escape this, I wish to embrace it. To me, the fact that life is without ultimate justification is not a curse, but an invitation to live with honesty.
You speak of freedom as though it could redeem the condition of existence, but to me, it is only another illusion. You say we are free to live, to create, to embrace the silence, but what lies beneath your words is still the same will, the same striving that drives all beings. You cannot escape it by declaring life an absurdity and then choosing to embrace it. You are still bound by the endless cycle of desire, even the desire to give meaning to life. Even the desire to live authentically, as you say, is still the will, pushing you forward. You may clothe it in noble language, but beneath it lies the same restless force. The truth is harder to bear than you admit. Existence itself is a mistake, and the noblest path is not to embrace it, but to deny it, to quiet it, to escape from its grasp.
And yet I find your path one of resignation, not of nobility. You wish to escape life because it does not conform to your hopes of peace. But I say that peace is not the aim. Life is not to be judged by whether it grants us rest. Life is to be lived, even in its struggle. When I say the absurd, I do not mean a force that enslaves us, but a condition that reveals our courage. Yes, desires return. Yes, satisfaction fades. Yes, we suffer. But in accepting this, in refusing to flee from it, we show our dignity. Think of Sisyphus, condemned to push his stone forever. The gods imagined it a punishment, but in my eyes, he is free because he knows his fate and embraces it. He says yes to the struggle, yes to the climb, yes to the weight of existence. This is the difference between us. You see suffering and call for escape. I see absurdity and call for revolt.
In this act, our thinkers turn to suffering. Is suffering the central fact of life, something to be minimized and escaped? Or is it a challenge that can be embraced, even transformed into a source of strength and revolt?
Suffering is not an accident of life. It is its very essence. Look closely at the world, and you will see that pain outweighs pleasure everywhere. For what is pleasure? It is nothing more than the brief cessation of a want. The short relief from suffering. Hunger is suffering. Eating is the temporary absence of that suffering. Desire is suffering. Its fulfillment only silences the torment for a moment before another longing takes its place. We live, therefore, in a constant state of lack, and this lack is what torments us. Even when our basic needs are met, boredom comes, and boredom itself is suffering, driving us once again into restless pursuit. You may call this striving heroic, but I call it the tragic nature of existence. Animals suffer, humans suffer. Even the great works of culture are born out of pain and want. If there is one truth that no one can deny, it is that to live is to suffer. And the task of wisdom is to recognize this, not to cover it with brave words.
I will not deny suffering. To deny it would be dishonest. We are fragile beings. We know pain. We fear death. We grieve. We struggle. But I cannot agree that suffering is the essence of life. To me, suffering is part of the human condition, yes. But it does not reduce all of life to misery. If you measure life only by the presence of pain, you will miss the full picture. A moment of love, a work of art, the laughter of a child, even the morning sun touching the earth, these cannot be dismissed as nothing more than brief distractions from suffering. They are real and they matter, precisely because they shine against the background of pain. The absurd is not simply that we suffer. It is that we suffer while longing for meaning, and the world does not supply it. But here is the point where I disagree with you. I do not see this as a reason to escape, but as a reason to embrace. The struggle itself, the endurance of suffering, the act of continuing to live despite it, is where our dignity lies. In our revolt, we turn suffering into strength.
You wish to elevate suffering into a source of strength, but that is to romanticize what is, in truth, endless misery. You speak of love and art, but look closer. Love, as noble as it may sound, is in reality the will of the species using individuals as its instruments, driving them into passion and torment to reproduce itself. Behind every smile of love, there are tears of jealousy, of heartbreak, of longing unfulfilled. As for art, it can indeed lift us for a moment, for in contemplating beauty or music, we escape the restless striving of the will. But note what I said, only for a moment. The will always returns, and the suffering resumes. Do not deceive yourself. The truth is harsh, and it must be faced without illusion. Life does not balance suffering with joy. It tips entirely in suffering's favor. The honest path, therefore, is not to embrace life as though it were good, but to withdraw from its traps, to quiet the will, and to see existence for the torment it is.
I hear the sharpness in your vision, and I do not deny that pain runs deep. But to withdraw, to quiet the will, as you call it, seems to me a refusal to live. You say love is only nature using us, but even if that is so, is it not still real to us? The passion, the joy, the risk, the loss. These are not illusions, they are experiences. You say art gives only temporary relief, but what else is life but temporary moments? Why should they be dismissed because they do not last forever? Nothing lasts forever, and yet it is worth living. I do not believe that joy cancels pain or that suffering is outweighed by beauty. I believe they exist together, inseparable. That is the absurd, the clash between our longing for permanence and the fleetingness of everything we love. To me, the task is not to escape this, but to face it. To revolt is not to say life is easy, but to say, even when it is hard, even when it is cruel, I choose to live. That choice, that yes, is what makes us human.
Schopenhauer sees suffering as the foundation of existence, the unrelenting weight that makes life a burden to be minimized. Camus accepts suffering, but insists that it is precisely in facing it, without fleeing, that we find our dignity. Now. We come to the question of meaning. Do our attempts to give life purpose rest on illusion, or religion, optimism, and grand systems, only ways of hiding from suffering? Or is there another way to live honestly without false comfort, even if the world has no higher meaning?
Human beings are desperate to see meaning where there is none. It is a trick of the intellect to soften the cruelty of existence. Religion promises salvation, as if all the pain of life would be justified in some other world. Optimists insist that suffering has a purpose, that it builds character, that it serves a hidden harmony. Philosophers too often invent systems to make life appear rational or guided by divine order, but these are nothing but consolations for the weak. The truth is plain. There is no grand design, no benevolent order. Life is suffering, and meaning is only a mask we place upon it to endure it. What is true wisdom? It is not to embrace illusions, but to see through them. Pessimism is not despair, it is clarity. Only when we stop deceiving ourselves with talk of higher purposes can we begin to quiet the restless will and free ourselves from its chains.
Here I find myself in agreement with you on one point. I too reject the illusions of higher meaning. I do not believe in some other world that redeems our suffering. I do not believe the pain of a child dying or a man condemned unjustly can be explained by a divine plan. I have written clearly, to hope for another life is to refuse to live the one we have. Where I part from you is in what follows. You strip away illusions and see only despair, the call to escape. I strip away illusions and see freedom, the call to live. When you know there is no meaning given to you, you are no longer bound by false hopes. You are free to create, free to love without guarantees, free to act without needing eternal reward, to live without appeal, to say yes to this life without asking for another. That is the courage I call for. The absurd is not an enemy to run from, it is the truth to embrace.
Your words sound noble, but to me they still hide the harshness of reality. You say we are free to create, but creation itself is another expression of the will. An artist creates because he is restless, because desire torments him, because he seeks release, and when the work is done, he feels satisfaction only for a moment, before the emptiness returns. You say we are free to love, but love, as I have said, is nature's snare, driving us into passion and jealousy, only to enslave us to the species. You say we are free to act, but every action springs from desire, and desire is the will, the same blind force. What freedom is there, if the very roots of our being are bound by this endless striving? No, freedom lies not in embracing life's illusions of choice, but in negating the will, in breaking its grip. Meaning is not to be invented, for all meaning is false. Wisdom lies in renunciation, in turning away, in letting go.
I cannot follow you into renunciation, for to me that is the real illusion, the illusion of escape. You say the artist creates only from torment, perhaps, but what of the moment when the work is alive, when music is heard, when beauty appears? Is that nothing? You say love is only the trick of the species, perhaps, but does that cancel the experience of joy, of closeness, of laughter in the night? No, these are not illusions, they are moments of life, even if fleeting. You speak of freedom as if it required escape from desire. I speak of freedom as the ability to live with desire, to live with suffering without appeal to false gods or hidden purposes. To negate the will is to negate yourself, to negate the world. One choose, instead, to affirm it, to stand in revolt against the silence, and to say, even if there is no meaning, I will live as if my life is mine, and in that defiance, I will find dignity.
Schopenhauer insists that meaning is always illusion, and that wisdom lies in turning away from life's false consolations. Camus agrees that there is no higher meaning, but instead of retreat, he calls for defiance, the embrace of life without. Appeal. Asterisk. Now we arrive at the last act. Having explored existence, suffering, and meaning, we ask, how should we respond? What is the wisest way to live, given the conditions of life as each thinker sees them? We withdraw from striving and quiet the will? Or should we embrace the struggle and live fully in defiance of the absurd?
The truest response to life's misery is compassion, renunciation, and the quieting of the will. When a person awakens to the truth that existence is endless suffering, he ceases to see his own striving as noble or worth glorifying. He sees that others, too, are trapped in this same cycle of pain. From this recognition springs compassion, the ability to suffer with others, to understand their burden as one's own. But compassion alone does not end suffering. The deeper wisdom is to negate the will, to free oneself from its tyranny. This is why I have spoken of asceticism, of saints and sages who turn away from desire, who refuse to let the will enslave them. Through art, through philosophy, and ultimately through renunciation, we glimpse liberation. We lessen the pain, not by embracing life's torments, but by loosening their hold. The wise person seeks not revolt, but release.
I too honor compassion, but I cannot honor renunciation. To turn away from life because it wounds us is to betray the very fact of being alive. You say the saint negates the will. I say he negates himself. For me, the highest response is revolt, not against others, but against the silence of the universe. To revolt is to live without appeal, to accept the absurd and yet continue. It is to imagine Sisyphus at the foot of his mountain, stone at his side, and to see him not as broken, but as free. His struggle is his own. His fate is his own. In pushing the stone, he gives his life meaning, not from heaven, not from illusions, but from his own act of defiance. And I say to every person, you, too, can live this way. Do not seek escape, do not wait for another world. Say yes to this. 1. Even when it is harsh, even when it is fleeting. The greatness of man is to live without guarantee, and yet to live fully.
You place dignity in defiance, but I see it as stubborn pride. What is revolt but another expression of the will's endless struggle? You would have man push his stone forever, smiling, yet you admit the stone will never stay at the top. What is this but glorified futility? To embrace suffering does not transform it into joy. It remains suffering. The saint who renounces desire has gone further than your hero. He has freed himself from the compulsion to push the stone at all. He has stepped outside the cycle. You call this betrayal of life. I call it victory over life's cruelty. Do not mistake resignation for weakness. It is strength to look upon the world's misery and refuse to be its plaything. In quieting the will, man rises above the endless torment and finds the only true peace available.
And yet, what you call peace, I call surrender. To refuse the struggle is to refuse the one thing we surely possess. Existence here and now. Yes, the stone rolls down. Yes, the struggle repeats. Yes, suffering returns. But this is our life. And if we can face it with eyes open, if we can embrace it without illusions, then we are free. I do not claim revolt abolishes suffering. I claim it transforms our relationship to it. It is not passive endurance, nor flight into ascetic denial. It is the conscious choice to live despite everything. That is why Sisyphus is not a fool, but a model. He knows the futility, and yet he says yes. In that yes is his greatness. In that yes is his freedom. I say again, we must imagine Sisyphus happy.
So ends our debate. Schopenhauer sees existence as suffering at its core and calls for compassion, wisdom, and renunciation, turning away from the restless will. Camus accepts life's absurdity, but urges revolt, the embrace of existence without appeal, the courage to live fully despite its futility. The question remains, is life suffering to be escaped, or absurdity to be embraced? That is for you to decide. Tell us in the comments which vision speaks more to you. Do you side with Schopenhauer, who seeks release from the burden of existence, or with Camus, who finds freedom in defiance? We look forward to hearing your thoughts.